So give me your name and then your birthday, and we'll start there.
My name is James Robert Ryans. I was born July the 3rd, 1944,
Okay.
in Oneida, Tennessee.
Alrighty, and what did your parents do for a living?
My dad worked on the railroad part-time at that time, and he also carpentered
Okay.
some. My mom worked in the hosiery mill over at Burlington Hosiery in Harriman, which was the biggest employer around pretty much in the county. She boarded socks, which is what that means is you pull hose up over these legs and it puts the crease in them and all that.
Okay.
But she worked at that, and
Okay.
that was their employment.
And how many siblings do you have?
There were 8 children. I was the third of the 8, and I had 2 sisters older than me, and I'm the oldest boy. There were 5 boys and 3 girls.
Okay. And where did you go to school?
We went to school at Emory Heights Elementary School over in Harriman, on the bluff overlooking Harriman. The school is now our church. We bought the building from the county and built a new church there
Okay.
about 10 years ago.
All right. So when you were at school, did you have any favorite teachers or coaches that made an impact on you?
I had favorite teachers. Had a teacher named Miss Secoy, wonderful teacher. Had a teacher that was the hardest teacher I ever had, and her name was Miss Honeycutt. We had her in the 6th and the 7th grade, but I learned more under her than probably any teacher in school. She was very strict, but she was rewarding too.
Good. So what was your favorite thing to do during the summer as a kid?
Well, we worked about every summer. We liked, when we had free time, we would take off to the lake, down to Swamp Pond Lake, and fish, pick blackberries. When we'd go fishing, we'd usually take our utensils with us, and we would fish, clean the fish, cook them, and eat them right on the spot. We picked a lot of blackberries. Mama canned jelly and blackberries, and so we were fairly poor, as most people we knew were at that time, and we canned and dried and froze what we ate in the wintertime. So the summertime we raised a garden. We had certain chores we had to do every day. We had chickens. We raised chickens, and we worked that garden. And Daddy would tell us a certain area to be cleaned up in the garden each day, or over several days. And if we didn't do it, sometimes we were out there late at night doing it.
Oh, goodness. Did you play any sports in high school?
Played football. Loved it. My favorite coach, I guess, was C.W. Pemberton. He was the coach at South Harriman High School, and later went to Rockwood and was the coach down there. But after sophomore year, we moved to Chattanooga. Our family did. Daddy went full-time on the railroad, so we went full-time. We moved to Chattanooga and bought a house down there. His route was from Chattanooga to Oakdale and back to Chattanooga every time. Well, all the time he worked on what's called the extra board. He would deadhead to Chattanooga, catch his train back to Oakdale and back to Chattanooga, and then he would deadhead back to Oakdale again. So it's an extra run every time he got called out. So obviously it was smart to move down there and only have to do, the 2 ways. But things got so much better once he went full time on the railroad, economically for us, and so we did well. We attended East Ridge High School, and the younger kids went to Spring Creek Elementary School. But I only stayed there for another year, and then I quit and joined the Army.
So why did you do that?
I did that because I just was not happy in school, and my mom and dad agreed to sign to let me go in the Army. So I went in the Army. I got my GED pretty shortly after I went in. I was fortunate enough to get a little bit more education after that, and took some college courses and stuff when I was stationed at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, through Fayetteville State University, and took a course or so down at Roane State down in Harriman, Rockwood, I guess, whatever you want to call it. But we were blessed. Once I joined the Army, I stayed in for my first 3 years. I decided to get out and see what the world was like. Got out, stayed 2.5 years, worked 2 or 3 different jobs, and then one day, all of a sudden, I said, I'm going back in the Army. So I signed back up, and I'd spent the first 2.5 years of my 3 years in Germany, so they sent me right back to Germany then. And I got recruited in Frankfurt at the train station in Frankfurt to go into Special Forces there. So I did, and that was the start of my 17-year Special Forces career. And I was stationed in Bad Tölz, Germany, which was an old World War II SS training facility. I mean, a nice facility. It's right down close to the Austrian border, and you could look out the windows of the barracks and see the Austrian Alps. So it was, I mean, it's a beautiful part of the country.
Yeah.
And stayed there. I only stayed there, let's see, 8 months, something like that. And then they decided to bring 2/3 of our Special Forces group from Bad Tölz up to Fort Devens, Massachusetts.
Okay.
So I was picked to come with the advance party to help set up for the rest of the unit coming to Fort Devens. And of course, that was the facility where the Army Security Agency was. And so we had some contact with them through our Special Forces intelligence. But it was a good move. Agnes and I got married. We started the first grade together, Agnes and I. And we had been separated for those years I was in Germany, but I came home on leave after coming back from Germany that second time, and came down to visit Agnes, and so she is my first great sweetheart. So we got together again, and we decided to get married, and that was 55 years ago.
Wow.
We've had a wonderful marriage, and she's been an outstanding wife. Nobody could ask for any more than that. But we've been married 55 years, got 3 children and 6 grandchildren, and we are super proud of all of them. They're a blessing to us every day. And we try to say it as much as we can, but even if we don't say it, we sure do mean it. Since I retired, I spent 20 years in the Army. I retired as a master sergeant. That's an E8, they call it. It's the second highest rank you can attain as an enlisted man. I would have had to stay past 20 to get sergeant major rank, which was the next highest rank. And we had agreed early on that we'd spend 20 years in there and we were going to come home.
Okay.
So we did, and I worked around some odd jobs for the first, 6, 8 months, 10 months. And then I got an interview at the post office. I'd took the test for the post office. Didn't think I'd ever hear anything from them. I was not disabled or anything, so all I got was a 5-point veterans preference. But the second time I interviewed, I got hired in Kingston, and I worked there for 20 years. I retired from that job. I started out as a clerk and a processor of mail and all that stuff, and I ended up as a supervisor there at Kingston and retired after 20 years there. So that was pretty much my working career.
Okay.
I was elected to the Roane County Board of Education while I was working at UT. I spent one tour in Special Forces as an ROTC advisor at UT.
Okay.
And so the time up there, opportunity came up to serve on the school board, and I did. I only was able to serve on it for like 2 years. I got orders then to go back to Fort Bragg because they had no idea what my plans were for retirement and didn't care. They planned long term. So we came back to Fort Bragg. I had 2 years left until I retired. I had just made Master Sergeant, and so you have to stay 2 years in grade, is what they call it, in order to retire at that permanent rank.
Okay.
And we did. Excuse me. So after those 2 years, I went back to the 5th Special Forces Group at Fort Bragg. I was the team sergeant on a Special Forces A detachment for those last 2 years. I had served different jobs in Special Forces all those years before, and we ended up with those 2 years out, moved back home. That's when, we got the job at the post office and all that. But we had a wonderful life, great family. The kids got to see things that most kids don't, because you move from, a real rural county school, a small county school, into an on-post school at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. There's about 40,000 troops at Fort Bragg. So, all their children went to school on post, if they lived on post, any of them that lived on post. And the high schools, there were no high schools on the military installation, so they had to go to the high schools in Fayetteville, North Carolina. That's the closest civilian, town around of any size. But I think Robbie was in the, he started out in the, I guess it's kindergarten over there, first time we were there. This is before we came to UT.
Okay.
And then went back. And then when he come back, he was in the 5th grade, maybe 4th, 5th, 6th grade, somewhere like that. And he served another short time in the schools over there. But now they didn't lack for money in their school system. It was a really a good system. But, our county folks did a good job with what resources they had. Did an excellent job. Proud of them always.
What was it like coming back to Kingston after being gone for so many years?
Well, when I was a kid, we came to Kingston only when you had to buy tags for your car or something like that, Mom and Dad. So Kingston was foreign to me. So when I retired, and we grew up in Harriman. When I retired, we built a house on the river over in Harriman, and I got the job at Kingston at the post office and just fell in love with the place. To me, it's the most beautiful little town, there is, because you got all the lake. It's just a picturesque place that everybody that sees it just thinks, man, that's a pretty place down there. And it is. The city park and all that stuff and the waterfront, it's just wonderful. And I got to enjoy that for 20 years while I was working at the post office. And at the post office, you meet everybody in town, basically, and, say hello to them and all that, and eat lunch at different places, you know. So it worked out real well. I thoroughly enjoyed it, loved it, actually. But when my 20 years was up, I was ready to retire, and I had no regrets. That's the same way it was in the Army. There were times that were tough, like in Vietnam and stuff like that. But when your time is over, you just step aside, because there are younger people waiting to take over, and it's a young man's game being in the Army. I was a Green Beret, and you've got to do the same thing, as the senior enlisted person as the youngest does, physically. So it's demanding, and I was only 39 years old when I retired from the Army. But now, 39-year-old body versus, an 18-year-old, I mean, there's a difference.
Yeah.
And your recovery time is different. But people in Kingston have always been super good to me, accepted me just like I was always supposed to be there. And I always felt more kin to them than I did to people in Harriman, even though we lived there, but everything we did basically was done in and around Kingston.
Okay. So
I love the historical part of Kingston, the fort. I mean, it's just wonderful. Just to think that was the jumping off point, going to Nashville. Everything west of Kingston was the wilderness back then, and so it was a big deal. And of course, in order to get a treaty signed with the Indians, they had to agree to make Kingston the capital of the state of Tennessee for one day, and that's what happened.
Yeah.
And so it just amazes me that they stepped up and did the things they needed to do. It's a small community, but it's just outstanding.
It's a good one. So I know in November you were selected as one of the Kingston treasures, or Roane County treasures.
Yes.
What exactly is that?
What that is the Founders Day. It's another name for Founders Day people. They pick one person from each of the county commission districts and make them, they call it a treasure, and that's just a person that has volunteered their life and at different times and all that to do projects to help people, to help the community and all that. And I've always tried to do that. When I was selected at the same time, a lot of really good people were. A good friend of mine, is Brother Ted Clower from down in south of the river. He went in the same time, and he's a fine Christian preacher, and love him, known him for many, many years. But it just feels good to be part of that class that went in. And, you do things as a volunteer, not because you want to get credit for them, but because you see things that just need to be done.
Yeah.
And you just do them. I mean, some people don't want to do anything like that, and that's fine. Everybody's not going to be a volunteer, but to me, it's just what I needed to do, and we've tried to be involved in our kids' school activities from the time they started, grandkids, because it's important to us. And I know Agnes, she was always straight A student, 100%. She was the brains, and maybe I was the bronze part of it. But she is a great student, great example. And when the kids come along, and the grandkids, she spent a lot of time working with them and teaching them to read their letters and math and all that stuff. And it made it much easier for them in school.
Definitely.
Because we were blessed with some straight A and B students throughout school.
Yes.
And that makes us proud anytime.
Well, we thank you. What were a few of the things that you volunteered in to get you elected as that treasurer?
Well, I was the manager of the Swan Pond Utility District, which is a water distribution district of Swan Pond area of Harriman and Emory Heights area for 20 years. We served, there's 3 of us that served in that capacity at no charge to, no salary. We were just as tight as you could be on money. So we none of the 3 of us ever took a salary or anything. So we did that as just 3 people did it before us, and we're not paid. And there's no way I was going to be on it and get paid. So, and I was fortunate enough to serve on the Board of Education for that short time. I won the race by 3 votes, as a matter of fact. And that I've been a member of the Kingston Citric Club from the time they started working on the cafeteria at the high school.
Okay.
We started raising funds and everything for that. I was the president of the Roane County High School Band Booster Association. We bought the uniforms that they're wearing now, the first uniforms.
Wow.
And it was hard to raise that kind of money because we had to raise something like $40,000 or $50,000.
Wow.
And we sold everything. We had car washes, we sold hats, all kind of paraphernalia, but we accomplished the mission.
Yeah.
And at that time, the band didn't receive hardly any funding from the school other than the teacher's salary. That was paid in the school system. Very little went into instruments.
Yeah.
And the band boosters bought most of the instruments.
Wow.
that were bought then. So things like that. When I'm a member of the American Legion post down in Rockwood, I'm the commander of the Roane County Military Honor Guard. We perform military funeral services for families that requested of any honorably discharged veteran. And I've been doing that for 15 years or ever how long. I've been retired from the post office when I could start doing it. And so I'm proud of that. When something's needed, try to do. In the past, I'll be 80 years old in July, so what I can do is very limited now, and I've been sick quite a bit this year, but hopefully we're back on the mend and getting ready to go to church Sunday.
Good.
And nothing I'd like more.
Well, I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for the interview.
You're welcome, and I'm mighty proud of my granddaughter and the Roane County High School. They've been good to our family.
Thank you.
You're welcome.